Hello, this is part 2 of a video series on adding a feature to the discounted.cash web application. In the first part, we added a table for showing a decade of earnings discounted back to the present day. In that part, we did a lot of copy pasting, and so now it's time to pay the piper, and so I'm going to do some refactoring. And the first refactor I want to do is there's a slider that gets reused here and here, and also on the top page, the index page. Let me start that up. Basically, it gets reused 3 times, and we'll probably use it more times. And so we want to just extract that slider as a Blazor component. And so here you can see it used on the main index page. There's going to be some more refactors, but let's just start with this one. And so I'm going to start, I'm not extracted a component yet, so I don't have a components folder, but it's common practice in Blazor to have a components folder, the common structure for projects. And so let me go ahead and add a folder, components. And I'm formatting this as a percent, and so I'm going to call it a percent range slider. Maybe we will have one that's not a percent later, but for the time being, let's just be specific about what it is. So let's call it percent range slider. I'm using the word range in there because that's the normal word that we use in HTML for a slider. So it's a little bit redundant. Okay, that purple squiggle again just means that we've got hot reload running, and we've done something that hot reload is not happy with, and that can usually just be ignored while we do our work. So let me go ahead and just copy this bit of code that I'm going to want to factor out, and I'm going to paste it into here. I'm not copying the layout stuff, so that column stuff, I'm not going to copy that, just the stuff that relates to this control. And now we need to generalize some of these variables, and so I'm just going to be calling things value. So the label is probably going to come from some kind of an input. So let's make a property called label. And I think the way that we can make this an input is we give that the parameter tag. And so we're going to pull out that label there. And let's see, this is the ID for this thing, so let's just call it range slider. And I believe that Blazor will take care of fixing up the IDs so they don't collide. And then we want to have a string representation. We're going to have a property for that, so let's just call that value string. And this value, we're going to call this value, and let's call this handle value change. And it's going to see if control dot will generate something for us there. It's not. So let's make a double value, and that can be a parameter. I want to implement this handle value change. Let's go take a quick look at this. So we need to take in a change event args there. So let's just copy this. Okay, this ToDouble function, we're going to copy paste this guy. All right. And let this be nullable. Okay. We need a value string. Let's go look at how we implemented value string. So we allow the value to be passed in as int. Let's see, as like a whole number. So where 1 is means 1%. So then we divide by 100 when we're doing math or um, formatting it as a percent. We may circle back on that. I think that's fine. And we'll probably circle back and let these min, max, and step be inputs. But let's just see how this is. Okay. All right, so I'm going to try and reuse this on the index page. And so on the index page, I have basically this block of code. And I'm just going to have both of them on there for now. So I'm going to have a duplicate. Let's see, there we go. Okay, and so this, remember we called it PercentRangeSlider. All right, now so off the bat, we don't like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this namespace and move this to our global imports, which you would think they do that for us, but they don't. So I'm going to put that here. All right, so every page can just pull in our internal components. All right, so we got a percent range slider. Let's see if that shows up. Sure enough, it's there and it's updating. So we want to bind its value. So the way we do two-way binding, let's first just demonstrate what one-way binding would look like. We have a value, and we can just say that it's the discount rate. Do we need the @ sign there? I guess so. So now the one-way binding, this is the second slider is this one. The first slider is the one we just created. So it's one-way bound. So if it changes in the view, it's going to update. It's going to set the slider. But the new slider is not two-way bound. So if it changes inside that slider, it's not updating. So we need to do a two-way binding. The way we do two-way bindings is we use @bind dash. All right, and we're probably going to get an error here, I think. No, that seemed to work. No, we're going to get an error. Sadly, it's a runtime error. Let's have a look at the console. And it's looking for a value changed property. So this is a convention that when you do two-way binding, it's going to take the name of the property and stick on the word changed on the end of it, and it expects an event handler with that name. And I checked the documentation on this before starting the recording here, and so it looks basically like this. So I'm just going to copy this code. It's called event callback, and we're going to put it right under value here, and we were using a double, and it just needs to have a name value changed, and then do we need to invoke it here? We might need to invoke it. Let's just see. I'm not invoking it anywhere, but I think this will get us past the runtime error. Okay, so that's past the runtime error, but it's still, the two-way binding still not working, so we're not using it. We're not invoking it anywhere. So remember, I'm using the on input to fire every time it changes. So here, right after the value gets set, I'm going to call the value changed, and I think just call invoke async. And do I need to use an async version of that, I'm wondering? Guess so. Yeah. So the great thing, this is really a understated advantage of Blazor, is that generally all the lifecycle hooks and event hooks work with async and await. And so I believe I can change this to be a task return type, and I think it will just work the way that we want. And this cannot be said about Microsoft Maui, which was, if you guys are familiar with Xamarin or WPF. So the classic desktop UI toolkits use an older style of events and basically built-in C# events, and those do not handle async functions or async delegates very well at all. And so it's really nice that in Blazor we can use async event delegates. All right, so this page should have reloaded, and look, there you go. We've got two-way binding. So I'm moving the legacy slider here on the right. I'm moving the new slider here on the left, and it looks like it's working just fine. So that means I can, we need to set the label on it. Let's go set the label. So label equals discount rate. And why did that not change? Does it need to be a string and a string? I don't know. I'm not sure why that didn't work. All right, we got label there, label here. Let's just put it up here, make sure it's not a style thing. And, oh, we've got an error. So I overlooked that down here at the bottom. Always easy to overlook. Let's see. Does not have a property name label. Oh, okay. So maybe I just don't need the @ sign there. Okay. So now we've got our label duplicated. Excellent. So now we can see side-by-side comparison. They look exactly the same. So that's good news. So we've successfully extracted a component. And let me go ahead and delete the old one. Voila. And I use the same thing on the decade page. So let's jump over to the /decade page. Decade page has two sliders here. And so the discount rate one is exactly the same as the index page. So we should see that's good. And then this one, we're going to end up, I'm going to paste two of them just for a second so I can make sure I get it right. This one is the growth rate and growth rate. So now we got two growth rates. Those are both working. Good. So I can get rid of this one. Okay, very nice. And there were some functions that we were using, and sadly I'm not getting my code lens IntelliSense here, but I think let's try and get rid of all these. Gonna work? No, I'm using that ToDouble still. So we'll end up factoring that out in a separate step. Not liking that for some reason. Okay. It just got sick. All right, that seems good, and this seems good, and let's go check back on the index page. I know there's, we're using this still, yes, and I think, probably don't need these strings anymore. Third string, discount rate string. And that's updating, that's updating. What else can we get rid of? Change discount rate. I think we can get rid of that. But I did break something, right? This value should be updating. So what I want to do, so we could hook up an event to that. I wonder. If I can also do this. I don't even know if I can do this. What's our function called? Get present value. No. Seems to be binding that like it's a string. My value change. Okay, so let's just pause here because whenever you use this @bind dash under the hood, it's using value changed to do the two-way binding. So when it changes, it can assign the discount rate. So I'm not allowed to set this twice. So what I'm going to do, this is probably going to be a temporary step, but I just want to get this refactor done and commit. I'm going to change discount rate to be a property. And I'm not going to change the casing or anything. I'm just going to make it a property like that. And then I don't have any help there from the refactor tools. So I'm going to do this manual way, the old-fashioned way. Is this going to help me at all? No, not helping me. So yet is going to go to underscore discount rate and set. It's going to go to discount rate equal value, and it's going to call, what do we call that function? Get present value. Okay, so this is a little bit ugly. I'm going to circle back and fix this. I just want to get the UI working again. It's still broken. What's it not liking here? The arrow. Oh, time. Okay, we're back in business. The home page is working. And let's make sure we didn't break the other page too. Okay, that all checks out. So let's check this in. And a great thing about conventional commits is you should always label a refactor as a refactor. And what that means is behavior did not change. And that's really significant. If you have integration tests or performance tests, then you should really see no difference. And so it's a good way to check if you have any kind of regression against a refactor commit. So this is a refactor commit, and I'm going to say extract PercentRangeSlider component. And let me just look over my diffs there. We deleted 36 lines here and added 2. That's great. There's the markup. There's the code. And we deleted 19 lines there, just added 7 for that property. And then, 36 lines for this guy. Okay, it looks good to me. So I'm going to commit that and push it right away. Okay. The next refactor I want to do is I want to get rid of this property that I just added. And so you might be asking, like, why would we just add it? I really like to make commits as atomic as possible so that people can understand them, that you really just do like one thing at a time. And if you ever need to roll back or cherry pick things, it's really pretty atomic. So I don't really like this property. And the reason I had to add this property is because I couldn't do anything when this value changed on change. And having the need to do that, you'll notice we didn't have to do that on the decade page. And that's just the way that we did the binding. On this index page, this present value is just stored as a field. And every time something changes, we go call this function called getPresentValue. And you can see that that's called all the time. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this function, and I'm just going to have it be recalculated on demand. And so that's pretty simple. And I just have this expression here, this function that calls the getPresentValue function. And I'm just going to change this to property. Again, I've got the case wrong there for normally properties are capitalized. And I'm going to get rid of this one. And then everywhere this is called, I'm just going to delete it and see if we can get away with not needing to call it. And then now we can get rid of, now we don't need to call this function. It's just going to be every time Blazor runtime asks, hey, what's the present value? It's going to get the latest value. So we don't really need to update it. So again, this becomes very simple like it was before. Okay. And yes, I don't mind if you rebuild. Where's my error? Get present value. So I don't think we need anything here. And if you're wondering why I have an onSubmit, I may not need it. I could probably get rid of it, but onSubmit is usually the right way to handle if you want something to happen inside of a form and when the user hits enter. A novice mistake is to go try and bind a keyboard event to the enter key. But HTML forms already have this mechanic for submission when you hit enter on any of the inputs. Okay. But if I don't have this here, the default behavior is going to be like to submit the page in a very old school HTML postback kind of way. And why do I have this form here to begin with? Because you get some style stuff with that. So, but it may end up that I just change this to a div. But for the time being, let's just leave it alone and make sure everything works. Okay, we see we have the right value there. Let's change this to 0. So with 0, we should get back the same value. If we change it to like 1, and then say the discount rate's like 10%, we should know the answer to that is about like 909. Yes, we saw that before. So if, you can memorize this. If you have $10 and discount at 10% rate a year from now, you have 91 cents less. Okay, so that looks good. And so this is a really nice refactor, because when you just get things on demand via like property accessors like this, it just saves you a world of pain when it comes to event spaghetti. So let me just fix up the name. Properties should generally have a capital Pascal case name. And let's just put it down here next to its sibling. And this way we kind of have our inputs ordered according to the inputs. So I think it's, yeah, we have our future cash flow, periods, and discount rate. Now, do I even need these other functions? Yes, because someone could type arbitrary text into here, and so we want to convert it similar to change periods. So I think these functions are still needed. But otherwise it looks good to me. All right. So let's save that. And let's just check the diff on that. Let's see how many lines we saved there. So we deleted, about 20 lines of code. So refactor, use property getter for present value. When you're making commit messages, a good practice is, try and fit the first line very short, very succinct. And then the second line, I usually try to make it answer the question why or so that, or a little bit more explanation. And so here I said use property getter for dash present value so that, so that we don't need all the event handling machinery. We don't need to think about like when things change. Oh, this changed, then this changed. We just eliminate all those possible bugs and code. So let's just go ahead and commit. Let's just commit that. I'm not going to push it yet. And now let's look if we can get away with not having this be a form and not having submit. So I'm just going to change this to be a div. And yay, Visual Studio did the right thing right there. And I think normally, let's pull up this and see if it looks different. It looks exactly the same. I was thinking that normally in Bootstrap, you might need a class called form. And let's see. See, normally they have form. But yeah, I don't see a top level class form, so I think we can get away with it. So it can just be inside of a div. And that will simplify that. And let's make sure it still works if I hit enter. Kind of hard to test since I haven't worked on change. I think, yeah, it's fine. Okay, and let's make this a div and get rid of all this. Okay, it didn't work that time. Don't know what I did differently. Okay, very good. So minor refactor here. Eliminate use of form tag because it is not really needed because we aren't doing anything on submit. Okie doke. All right, now I'm just kind of scanning to see if there's anything else that jumps out as needing refactor, and I think I used this ToDouble function. I think I copied and pasted that probably 3 times, and so we're just going to pull this out to a kind of a helper class. And so do I have, let's share layout stuff. So I'm just going to put something at the top level. And what should this be called? This is painful to think about because it's just such a small, simple function. I'm just going to call it parsing. And I reserve the right to change it later. Switch that to file scope namespace. It's going to be a static. And we're just going to pull in this function here. Okay, and what's the problem? We didn't use it anywhere yet. And actually, I'm gonna, that's fine. This one, I'm gonna do something just slightly different. Is I'm going to try using it as a static up here. Let's see. Oops. So that's called a static import, and so it's importing that class sort of like into the current scope, and so I can just call it there without calling parsing. And let's say Control F5 rebuild, make sure that all works. So everything seems to be fine there. I think it's used there in those labels maybe, or in the input here. Yeah. And did we use it inside our component? Yes. Yep. And so yes. Okay, component still looks good. It's handling that value change under the hood. You know, HTML events are just sending an event object, and very often those event objects send the value as a string. And so everything seems good. All right. Refactor, extract to double. And I'm going to go ahead and push that. And so I think that does it for the refactors that I wanted to do. In my next video, I will probably get back to this decade page and finish up adding the things I wanted to add. There is some mathematical refactoring here. I will hold that thought for the next video as well. Yeah, I remember I copy pasted this line verbatim. And so in the next video, I'll probably refactor the math and then get onto these features. And then once things kind of look good, I'll add some navigation. I hope these videos are helpful. If they are helpful, let me know so that I can decide whether I should keep doing them.